common land areas and look into them. One of the digs is it Bampton Com, which I had no idea where it is, but it seems to be on the end of High Street.
Oh, it's getting up there, isn't it?
It's a long way up. Yeah.
Well, I went near there last Saturday. I went to the Kentmere Valley. You can get to High Street from there.
I would think it's at the other end of it, which may well be accessible by road, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Bampton is.
No, I've never heard of it, I'm afraid.
So tell us more about this excavation, Andy.
Yeah, it was just in the local paper. It's the National Trust have got some funding to do some research into common lands, which for some reason one of the High Street, the Roman road on the top of the hill, which is obviously the highest one in Britain, runs through one called Bampton, which I've never heard of, Bampton Common. And they're going to do I think it was 2 or 3 week dig on that. And they're looking for volunteers.
Yeah, it's in 4 sections. It's going to be over quite a few years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this the Bampton of the Roman fort?
No, that's Brampton, isn't it?
No, Bampton.
Yeah.
Well, it could well be in that case, because I'm not familiar with Bampton at all. I was thinking I ought to try and let Tommy know as well, because he's into the following all the Roman roads in this area.
I thought the one near Bird Oswald, where we stayed, wasn't that That's
Brampton, yeah, with a P.
Different.
Yeah.
Brampton, that was Brampton.
Yeah, Bampton.
Bampton.
Above Ullswater somewhere.
Nothing wrong with a bit of Ullswater. Right, so I just got a couple of announcements to make. So Star Carr is going to be in 2 parts. Now, Margaret, everything that we're going to do today is going to blow your head, right? So there's going to be a lot in it.
Ooh,
and next week, we're going to look at the individual stuff about Star Carr.
Right.
You know, I wanted to, I'll pick, as through this lecture now, I'm going to pick little bits out that we're going to focus on. That's the way we're going to do it, because I've been mentioning Star Carr for ages.
Yeah.
So the other thing as well is that I made an announcement some time ago that I was retiring from lecturing, and you were the only guys that I was going to be doing talks to. So that's going to be as of August. That's going to be the end of August. So I'm going to be stopping.
Special, aren't we?
I'm going to be your special needs. Yeah, I've got to keep you on top of you. So I will be, all my lectures will cease at the end of August, except for you guys, and I'll still be doing Thursday morning for the time being, but everything else is going. Because as I spoke to somebody in the BBC yesterday, I've got to crack on with that side of things. So I thought, I see you're special. And actually, at Margaret, right, the only reason I'm continuing these is because of you.
Well, I thought as much.
Yeah. It's well, and Drina, well, and David as well. And I'm actually continuing it for Andy and
doing everything now.
And all right then. And I'm going to mention Pat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm not exactly doing it for Anne, because you know, I got to put Anne in there somewhere. Right. So the other thing as well is I wanted also to tell you that your monies will be due next week. So start getting them over, including you, Anne. Anne, everyone called Anne has got to pay £100 now for every 2 months. Everyone called Drina has to pay 49. Everyone called Margaret has to pay 51. Everyone called Andy has to pay 48. And Peter has to pay 52. So are you seeing what I'm doing then? Some people get reductions, but other people get increases.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because Pat's been with me ages, she's got to pay 45. And Roger has to pay 55.
Yep. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah.
And David, not to confuse David, because if I say anything to David, he'll believe me. So David, you just got to pay 50 quid, okay?
Right.
See, David's already written a check and sent it to me, so I couldn't change that now. Right, so that's that. So what I want us to do now, I mentioned the horrible thing about money. Now Pete's looking as miserable as sin, as usual. What's changed? Anything you want to say, Pete?
No, I just got my favourite T-shirt on.
That's
What,
good
the
one.
Celtic Nations?
Celtic Nation.
The Celtic, yeah.
Celtic.
And Celtic a football team? Or are they just dyslexic?
They are a Scottish football team, yes.
Yeah, but they're Celtic, not Celtic, and it's spelled the same.
Yeah.
They're the green grapes, aren't they? The Celtic are the green grapes.
Yeah.
And not
Right,
the
moving
orange.
on. No news from you, Pete. Good. Drina.
No news, no.
Pat, what about you, gorgeous?
Nothing, thank you. Well, how many weeks is the class?
What's that, darling?
How many weeks is a class? You know, the 50 pounds is for how many weeks?
Right. So, okay. Let me get this sorted out. So, I'll just double check the.
I don't know if it was 10 weeks or 11 weeks.
No. Oh, you get 12 weeks, Pat. But Drina only gets 6. So I make it up in the long run. Hey, I should go into business. I could make a fortune doing this. Charge the people who are rich more, and then the poor people charge them less, and everyone thinks they're getting a good deal. Right. So okay. So you basically so if I go with the register, you've had right. So you started. Oh, that's April, isn't it? Oh God, hang on. I'm a bit lost a minute, but
so everyone's on
hang
their
on,
own.
I got it. No, is that one? David? No. Jessica? No. Stav? Evan?
We're not all on the same class, huh?
Right, yeah, no, it's the same schedule. Anyway, I'm trying to right. Look, the main thing is you've got you had 3 classes in May, and you've got 3 classes in June. So you've got 1 next week and the following week, and that'll be it. So that's basically 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Oh, it's 8 weeks long. That's what it is. Okay. Right.
Sometimes it's 9,
Right.
but that just confuses people.
Right. So I've got next week.
And if you say 9,
yeah.
Gina thinks she's in a German class.
Right. So
I'm getting good at this. Do you want a crude joke?
Okay. No, next week and the following week I'm still paid for. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just saying to people, start getting it over to me.
Right.
Andy.
Nout. Thank you.
Right. Oh yeah, Pat. You're 1 week up. You're 1 week behind because you transferred from a Thursday. Yeah. Get it, Pat? Right. I'm glad you do. Right. Margaret.
Well, I went to my favourite Kentmere Valley, which is absolutely full of glacial boulders. I'll send some photographs to you. They're fantastic. But I went into the local church, which has got a history right from the beginning of time, life in the Kentmere Valley. And it was interesting to see in 1305 to 1335, they had a list of all the residents, and they were all men, 19 men and just 1 woman.
Bet she was popular.
All their names, it was all their names.
They weren't all called John, were they?
Pardon?
They were probably all called John.
Yeah, but why would there just be 1 woman and 19 men?
Is there something to do with some kinds of census that she was noble and the other women weren't?
God, no, it could be.
It's a mining community up there, wasn't it?
There's quarrying.
Yeah. I bet she was probably the housekeeper for them.
Ah, do you think so? Yeah.
You know what? She probably had fun in hitting them with a big stick every 5 minutes.
Absolutely. It could have been one of those places. Yes.
Right, Andy, let's move on. Right.
Yep.
Andy always has to bring it down, don't he? David, anything you want to say, love?
Oh, thank you, dear.
No, yeah. Right, okay. Yeah, actually, I was just looking at the register. You've got 1 week left because I haven't put this week in. Pat, can you stop asking stupid questions?
Sorry. I
Yeah,
thought
you
we're
are
all on
two.
the
No,
same.
you're 1 week behind, Pat. Shut up, Pat. Just in future, shut up. Right, Anne.
Yes, yesterday, tell me if you know about it. They've done some more research on Iceman. They found there's some new techniques for looking at nutrition. Have you heard about this?
No,
No.
go on. We want to know more.
Well, it was on a program with Tim Spector, who's one of our chief nutritionists in this country. And they had this man called Frank Maxwell, who's based in Italy and does these mummy studies around. And of course, we know they could do DNA, and we've known they could do contents of the stomach. But what they can do now is also find how the arteries are working and what their microbiome is, their gut biome. They can measure all that.
Wow.
So they looked at this. So this man went back, this Frank, whatever his name is, and went and looked at Iceman. And they found he'd had a couple of cereals. It had rye and einkorn wheat and fatty meat for his meal. They looked in his arteries. They found there was some calcification, which the chap who not the visitor, but the one who knows all about this sort of stuff, said possibly that was due to him having a diet high in the grains, which he'd got quite a bit of there, which would cause the calcification. But his microbiome was absolutely amazing compared with those of us who have a Western diet. Mm. And America has only about 10% of the microbes this Iceman had. Sorry, they have 5%. We only have 10% because we have so damaged our microbe by our Western diet. And then he was talking about if some other people, some salt miners about 2,500 years ago who were using salt a lot in preserving stuff, and they ate a lot of cheese and that sort of stuff. So their diet became very different when they got the addition of this salt. Anyway, I thought it was interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is the Iceman the one that was found in the Alps?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Otzi the Iceman from about 5,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Do you know what, right? Do you know what? I've never come across anyone who's actually seen Otzi the Iceman. And anyone been to Innsbruck or anywhere like that?
Nope.
Not yet.
Do you know when it's somebody like Sandra, it's like, oh, Sandra's been everywhere, hasn't she? It's just like, you know, but you can say, people have been to the Pergamon Museum in Germany, and they've been to Boston, and they've been to Peking and all the rest of it. But I have never met anyone who's actually seen Otzi the Iceman.
No.
So what I want us to do now is I want to get straight on to where we need to be. And I'm going to I got to type in a location. The one thing, I had everything set up today, but I've let myself down because I don't have a map where Carr actually is. So I think that would be a good place to actually start. So if I get a map up here, and if we go there, hang on a minute, start, 1 second. Oh yeah, and oh yeah, this is the other thing I wanted to do. I wanted us to have a quick chat about what people know about Carr and see if their conceptions are right or wrong. So I'm just going to bring this up here now, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do that. Hang on. Carr. Right. Okay. Star Carr. All right. So let's just show you where Star Carr is. And if we sort of screen share, and then I that's one thing I wanted to do, have a little bit of a think about what we know and what we think about Star Carr. So if we do this now and we go like that, screen start, and we go there, right, that's the location of where Star Carr is. So it's off on it's off on the North Yorkshire coastline, and there it is, Star Carr. It's very near York. And without giving too much away, there's the association with the Star Carr Lakes as well. It's not too far away from the modern coastline. So to give you an idea where we are. So what we have been doing, we've been looking on the west coast. Last week we looked at the footprints. Looked down at Cardiff. We were looking at the Goldsmith footprints as well. And this week we're on the east coast, and just north of that, way north of that, approximately on the coast between Newcastle upon Tyne and Edinburgh, we've got Hoyk. So we're starting to look at these sites and we're starting to understand them, and we go up to the Hebrides, and we look at the inner Hebrides, and we look at Oronsay. And then again, we've mentioned all the way up in Shetland as well. We've mentioned some of the most northerly Mesolithic evidence as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pop off, and I don't think I'll do the rounds of everyone, but as she's on the screen and you can see the top of her head, Margaret, if I mention Star Carr to you without looking at a book and without looking at a screen, without looking at anything, tell me what you think and know about Star Carr. Just share it with us, please.
Well, it's a very old Mesolithic site. I think about 9,000 years old.
We're getting there, yeah.
They found, where was it near there that they found the earliest evidence of a house?
Yeah, actually that's at Star Carr. Yeah.
And they found these headdresses made from red deer skulls.
Yeah, that's correct.
Harpoons.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of material.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's you done. So thank you for that's with all that, Margaret. So what we're going to do now is that we're actually going to pick on Anne. So Anne, what do you know about Star Carr?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I don't. It'll be new and interesting, but I don't know anything now. No.
Right. Okay. Okay. What we're going to do, I know Andy will be able to say a fair bit, and I know that Pat might say a fair bit. So she's nodding her head. Okay, that's a shame. You didn't listen to the class that we had on Star Carr 50 years ago, Pat, but you've probably forgotten it. Trina, what do you know about Star Carr?
Nothing.
We're not doing well, are we?
I always get confused with the fact it's called Star Carr. I'm expecting something a star shape. I don't know why. But
with a double R.
it's a double R.
I've got to ask Andy a personal question in a minute before we crack on. But Peter, hey, what do you know about Star Carr, Pete?
Absolutely nothing.
Right, okay then. To really spoil it now, Andy, have you got to the end of Picard 2?
I can't remember whether we did or we didn't. I've forgotten all about it.
I thought you were really into it.
I am. I can't remember whether we did. I think we did.
All right. I won't give you any.
No, don't say anything, because we certainly watched as much as we could when we watched it, and I'm sure we got on to series 2. But I just have a feeling we might not have seen the very end of it, which would be ridiculous.
Andy, you need to.
Yeah, I'm going to go and do it now.
But Andy, I'll still charge you for this lecture, though.
Oh, okay.
Right, okay. Right. So what I want us to do now, as a bit of a backdrop, I told you there was lots I wanted us to go through today. And as I say, this is not meant in any way to sort of blow our minds. This is meant to try and give you that sort of overview. And hopefully you're looking at an image on the screen now, yeah?
Yeah.
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 So from the heart, for me, Star Carr represents an archetypal archaeological site from the Mesolithic period, the Mesolithic site. And when we say archetypal, it's up until about 50 years ago, basically 90% of what we knew about the Mesolithic period in Britain was because of Star Carr. And probably about 20 years ago, 80% of what I had told you about the Mesolithic period would be about Star Carr. And this is why I've mentioned Star Carr most weeks, even when we're doing the Paleolithic period. And I didn't do it first, and I didn't really want to do it first because we would have based everything that we're doing, so we're doing it the other way around. So one thing that we do know about Star Carr is the conceptual understanding of what we know about Star Carr has completely changed. And when we know about conceptual understanding, is that 1 minute it's a site that's temporarily used, the next minute it's used all the time, the next unit's only used for a short period of time. It's this date, it's that date, these things are found there as a hunting site, people live there, you know, and all these different concepts. And as we know in archaeology, things do change and interpretations change and understandings of sites change. So Star Carr is, as we've established, a Mesolithic site in North Yorkshire, and we've established where it is. It's around 5 miles south of Scarborough, and I don't know if anyone's ever been to Star Carr, but most of you have been to York, so Star Carr is not too far away. We would say now that we're learning a great deal about other Mesolithic sites. Sefton, for example, Lunt, sites that we've been doing over the past few weeks. And we think of Star Carr now as putting the meat on the bones, actually putting the meat on the bones. So what we are going to do is a little bit of text, an image, a random image, a little bit of text, random image. So again, this beautiful reconstruction, is this what the Star Carr settlement looked like? Now, years ago, they used to just think that there was one building and that was it. And a crude interpretation by the archaeologists 70, 80, 90 years ago was that there was a single building there. It was temporarily used. Now we know that there's a number of buildings there. And when Margaret said that there was a building there, she was right, but there's a lot more buildings there. Now, again, this is a reconstruction, and what we do know is that a village was placed on marginal land within a landscape of reeds and glum darkness. And again, within the margins, we use the word within the margins as land that people were restricted to because everybody else used the other land around them. That's absolutely poppycock, because it's likely that the people that used Star Carr were the only people in that area for miles around. The land was occupied by the enemy of humanity at that time, the tree. Again, that does sound nonsense, but it's what we've established. You are right in what you said, Margaret, but you were right if you'd said that the site dates back to 9,000 years BC. You said 9,000 years ago. 9,300 years BC or 11,300 years ago. 11,300 years ago. That puts it at the edge of that time that the ice had only melted a few hundred years before, and that within this landscape, the lake that these people occupy was a glacial lake. This was a meltwater, basically. And then again, eventually, because this silted up and mudded up and the meltwater had gone elsewhere, within 1,000 years, the use of the site had disappeared into obscurity. When I say disappeared into obscurity, again, it's not obscure to us today. And there are reasons why people abandon the site. Do we not say the same thing about all Mesolithic sites? That sites are relatively and indiscriminately abandoned in the Mesolithic period at one point or another. But then again, so were sites in the Neolithic period. So were sites in the Iron Age. So were sites in the Roman period. So are sites in the medieval period. So are sites today. Just because sites are abandoned, it's no big deal. Humanity moves on. We move on, and we mutate, and we evolve, and we become, and we own, and we change. And again, we love the words. The TARDIS of Star Carr, the TARDIS of Star Carr, the timbers, the depths of the archaeology that survive in the once muddy bottom of the lake, which is now preserved under peats, which are being understood and unraveled and cared for and cherished and wonderment at. So we would say that this site is within a snapshot of sort of great change. And again, as we've always said, everything seems to be within a snapshot of great change. This site itself occupied and offered us a new statue of revelations. And I'm not reading from my notes at this minute. Sorry, I've gone right off them. But this site itself offers us the time when temperatures were rising quite dramatically. Now, interestingly enough, is the following note of worth. Some of the temperatures back then, 11,300 years ago, could be said to be something similar to some of our weather conditions today. I don't know how much of that is true or accurate, but what I would say is that the sea levels are very, very different back then, quite dramatically different. That's the big difference. And the big difference is the trees. The big difference is the human beings. In fact, there's a lot of different things. Do you know, Margaret asked if she's mentioned this twice, so I'll mention it a third time. I'm picking on you, Margaret. I'm going for you this week. She said, well, if I make footprints in the muds at Morecambe Bay, would they still be there in a million years' time? And I'm going to say this. If we had a building built within the margins of a lake today, and that lake silted up, and that building was of wood, would that building still be there 1,000 years later in the muds and the silts? Come back at you, Margaret. That's something to think about. So, are you all there, guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
None of us are all there. That's why we're listening to you.
I don't want to listen to you, Pete. I just got to check. From. You remember that lecture I did a few months back, and I was speaking for a whole 40 minutes, and there was no one there. I remember it. I was there. I give the occasional giggle, Lan, so I know you're there. So we will say that the challenging nature of finding the site of Hawick. Now, we've done Hawick, so we know where it is on the Northumberland coastline. we looked at Hawick and we said, you know, Hawick, you know, it's on the edges of being the oldest building in Britain. But this one dates to 11,300 years ago. The buildings within this landscape are far older. Yes, it's almost as if wonderful Margaret was reading off a script, but we've got the red deer stag skull caps. Basically, it's a skull cap which we'll come across in our images. That's what Star Carr looks like today, right? That's what it looks like today. We've also got these were said to have been used as headdresses. But again, we're going to examine that. And next, what I'm going to probably do is maybe not take notes today and work out what I'm doing next week in regards to Star Carr. I'm just going to think, right, what's the type of things that we can sort of pick on for next week out of after doing this today. We've got projectile points, almost as if these are made of red antler deer. Red deer antler. We've got points. We've got sharpened points. They could be used for harpoons and what have you. There's one thing when we think about red deer antler points, is that they're not the type of thing that you'd come across in normal everyday archaeology. We think of flint, don't we? So these organic materials were preserved due to having been buried in water-logged peat. And sort of, oh, there's Nikki. We don't want to talk about Nikki. So there we go. We think of this and we think, whoa, what's going on? Right, okay. So this is now, this is sort of giving you an idea now or something or other. And then we think about maybe a reconstruction of a building in the past. I don't know. I really don't know. Obviously fish there, drying or whatever's drying on there. Bit of a reconstruction. Again, when we do this, we need things to make us think, and we think about some grasslands on the margins and the trees. Why they lived on top of a lake could be for loads of different reasons. They probably lived on top of a lake because it was easier to put buildings on top of a lake than it was to put buildings and to clear trees. You know, it just makes more sense. So all of this being preserved in waterlogged peat. And the point is, being the archetypal site, being the site, the archetypal, wonderful set of archaeology that we actually find here. This is opposed to what we would usually find associated on an archaeological site from the Mesolithic period. We usually find stone tool objects, while here we've got lots of organic objects. So what I did say at the beginning was that I wanted to just sort of look at some key details, some sort of key facts, and there's lots of them. There's lots of bits and of pieces and so on. And I've made a little bit of a mistake when I've mentioned Star Carr over the first few weeks. I'd mentioned the archaeologist Gordon Child was the excavator. The excavator was a chap by the name of Graham Clark. So yes, a little bit of an error with me. Gordon Child was excavating at this time, but I got the archaeologist wrong, so I do apologize for that. So when we think about this landscape, the archaeology was found by a complete and utter mistake. That's Nikki Milner, and we've mentioned Nikki Milner with her excavations before. This is re-excavating. So excavation of the site began in 1948, a year after artifacts were first noticed by an amateur archaeologist known as John Moore. Now, can I just mention one thing? I can go back and forth on this, and I can be all over the place. I'm going to mention John Moore. John Moore was one of those great amateurs that would find an archaeological site and not really get much credit for his discovery. Because if it wasn't for John Moore's discovery, this site may never have been found. So again, up the amateurs, up those who don't have qualifications in archaeology, but then again, they make the discoveries. So well done, John Moore. Thanks for finding this site and giving us the archaeology that you can see in front of us today. So the site is most famous for some of the extremely rare artifacts discovered during the original excavations. But there have been excavations since, Nikki, excavations since. And they are constantly re-excavating the site to sort of understand how the original interpretations, are we seeing what's going on properly in archaeology? Are we interpreting things right? And I discovered something the other day, and I had planted some corn that had already been grown in pots. So I planted some corn, and I just thought, right, to keep the chaff growing tall, I got little stones around the corn and put them at the bases of the corn, loads of little stones. And I looked through it and thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I thought, did our ancestors do anything like this as well? And then I thought, well, maybe they did. Maybe when we're looking at Neolithic sites, that's why we get lots of stones, because what they're growing was so valuable that they would needed to protect it on ground level from roaming animals. So by putting stones around the bases was assisting the growing of the crop. And I mention that in this context in regards to what we're looking at, because interpretation and understanding of archaeology does alter. And by, as I did a few moments ago, admitting that I was wrong by getting the wrong archaeologist excavating the site for the past few weeks, by reanalyzing things, we can surely put things into a wider reinterpreted landscape. And I think it's great that we have debate, and I think it's great that people come up with things in these lectures. Somebody mentioned to me a few days ago, and they said, why didn't you just stop all your lectures and just like get on with the next part of your life? And I thought, well, actually, I need these lectures because it makes me think. It makes me go to areas, and if ever I want to write a book on archaeology, I've got so much research material in the forms of videos, and you guys are there, and it's great. We do this. You guys are reinterpreting the original material every week. It's so great, and we're doing that with Star Carr now, as Nikki's doing it there, and again, that tree there is that, and it's just looking at that in the ground. Now you can ask me, look at that there, touch it, love it, you know, have the discourse and the intercourse with it. I look at that. That's been there for 10,000 years. Amazing that's still there, and it's not all cut up, right? It's still there. So in a way, it's part of that wider picture that I've been trying to implore upon you. When we look at not just humans, we look at flora and fauna, we look at other things, we look at how other things happened. And by them looking at by them looking at the wider landscape in the context 11,000 years ago, we look at the wider landscape 11,000 years ago. And it helps us understand more from a human looking on perspective. So this is why looking at this tree is wonderful there, and it's all sort of interwoven with other bits of wood that have been put there by humans, and it's that sort of clarity of nuancial landscapes, the hinterland, that really helps us understand more. There we go. Look at that there. That is one of the 21 headdresses. I've called them islets in the past. Headdresses, stag skull caps. Love it. So Starcar is under farmland, and as you know, it's still being looked at, and the Vale of Pickering and so on. And one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we care for the ground that the archaeology still survives at, because how would that seem in a museum? Who do I pick on? Okay, we dug all that out, right? And so on. Pat, would that work in a museum? If you look at that in a museum, does that work in a museum, or would you prefer to see it there?
Well, you take up a lot of the museum and it's got to be moist. Did they cover it back up?
Yeah, every time, Pat, every time.
Yeah. So I guess it doesn't work somewhere else. It only works there.
It only works there. It only works there. You're right. It only works there. Yes, it does only work there. And this is one thing that they do at Flag Fen. That's in Peterborough. So at Flag Fen, you get to see the archaeology there. And I know one or two of you have been to see Flag Fen. I think you have anyway. You can see it. You can see what's going on with Flag Fen. More of these headdresses. We do debate what these were used for and how and where and what for all, but we'll keep that there. So the archaeology is preserved within a paleo lake known as Lake Flixton. So we've already established at the end of the last ice age a combination of glacial, post-glacial morphology, water, filling a basin filled, there you go, and that's Lake Flixton. Right, so we've got a basin full of water. But anyway, the site is preserved due to Lake Flixton having been infilled with peat during the course of the Mesolithic. And that could tell us why the site was abandoned. But then again, people may have just thought, well, just go somewhere else. Hang on. We don't want lots of books written about Starcar. Look at that there. Nikki Milner, there she is. Tim Scandler Hall is another name for you in archaeology, Barry Taylor and Chantal Cornier. And there you go, boats. We've got boats. We've got evidence of boats. Yes, we do. We've got evidence of boats. So waterlogged peat prevents organic fines from oxidizing. It has led to some of the best preserved conditions possible. Such conditions have preserved the famous bog bodies found in other parts of Northern Europe and of course Lindo Moss here. And now we get the Peterborough. We get Must Farm. Nearly forgot the name there. Must Farm, dating back to 3,000 years ago. So really good organic evidence there. As a result of such good conditions, archaeologists were able to recover bone, antler, and wood, in addition to the flints that are normally all that is left on sites from this period. Ask the question: do we have human remains? Funnily enough, with most of these sites, we really don't. Look at that there. It's just like looking down and going, oh my God, what's going on there? Okay. We do have bits of human evidence, but it's not sort of burial ground, you know, like you've got all these bits here associated with all the different animals associated with the site, right? You know, we don't get sort of all human bodies hanging around. We don't get that. Most of the evidence for human remains in the past at this time is not about. We don't know where the bodies are, but where we do find the bodies are of animals. Okay, we find the remains of animals. You know, lots of them, bone, antler, and what we do find from analysing all these little bits, because in between all that stuff as well, we not only understand the Mesolithic condition of the occupation, we also know that from the bits of wood that there were birch, aspen, and willow, and obviously we got lots of wood surviving and other wood as well. And obviously by examining all this evidence as well, we're getting lots and lots more stuff like we're getting the evidence of reeds, water lily, aquatic plants. And obviously, all of this sort of helps us understand what the time was like. You know, by looking at, we've got birch, aspen, and willow. They could come in from anywhere, but then you think, well, then they're around a lake. These trees are around the lake, and they couldn't have come far, because you've got these big chunks of tree lying there. So, you know, they can't have come from anywhere. They must be from there. And by looking at the evidence as well, whether this is all evidence of what they ate, or some of these bones may have been washed in, but we could probably understand that they ate red deer, or did stuff with red deer that we get associated with the antlers. Roe deer, elk, oryx. The bones also tell us of wild boar, hare. So those are all your herbivores, and beaver. So we've got remains of beaver as well. So we got evidence within the assemblage of the carnivores, such as wolf, lynx, bear, fox, pine marten, badger, and hedgehog. So that sort of gives you an idea of the overview what the fauna was like, alongside the flora and the fauna. So we do think in lots of ways that the Mesolithic past was just about napping bits of flint, right? But we now know that there's a wide range of objects being made out of red deer and elk antler, made out of elk bone, made out of auroch bone, and artifacts being made out of things such as bird bone. And when we look at this period of the Mesolithic, we get anomalies, and the anomalies are hematite being found at the site, iron pyrites, you know, that goldy looking stuff that's in stone, iron pyrites. Obviously, so they're doing stuff with all these things. We're finding them on site. They wouldn't actually be there, because remember, it's a peat bog, and it's a bit of a lake, and anything like that would have fallen really deep into the glacial, into the mud. So they're sort of brought in. So we've got evidence of amber. Where's the amber coming from? Collected up on the shores, way away. Shale, and a decorated pendant. Now, we've done the decorated pendant before, but you know what? We're going to do the decorated pendant again. That's one thing I'm going to take a note of. We're going to do the decorated pendant. It's fascinating. And I've done that, I think, twice with Andy. We're going to do it a third time. So we'll do a decorated pendant. So that's believed to be the oldest Mesolithic art in Britain. Beautiful. It's beautiful, this decorated pendant. We've also got evidence of, listen to this, tightly rolled pieces of birch bark and pieces of birch resin, pitch, or tar and worked bone. Stop. Anne mentioned Otzi the Iceman, and lots of what we do see preserved with Otzi the Iceman 5,500 years ago is also very similar evidence we see with the site double the age, 11,000 years, where we also see birch bark with Otzi the Iceman. And we see other bits and bobs that he was used to make fires. So we're getting all these bits of archaeological evidence at Carr. So in many ways, what we do see Carr is a site of many bits of archaeology, many bits of our past, many bits of time signs, many postcards, many stories. And I know Anne's going to want to ask this, so I'm going to cut her. I'm going to cut her to the chase. What makes this different from footprints? What does make this different from footprints? Why isn't that as significant as footprints? Why isn't that telling a similar story? That's what we're going to do next week, right?
Yeah.
That's the decorated pendant. Wow, look at that image. Wow, that decorated pendant. Wow. Next week, folks, next week, right? However, why is that not the same as a footprint? Why are these things not the same as a footprint? And
they somehow don't represent life in the same way.
They don't represent life in the same way. You are right. And maybe we've been spoiled. I don't know what Pete just said, but say it, Pete.
They've been manufactured, they've been made, whereas these are just natural remains.
The footprints, yeah, the footprints.
The footprints just a natural remaining. The others are actually
and it wasn't
made
meant
by
to be
hand.
there. It wasn't meant to survive, but it's there. But I probably because I think in many ways I'm going to say the wrong thing, and maybe this is not what you guys are thinking, but maybe this is too sanitized. We see bones, we think of bones, and we know bones, and we look at them and we talk about them every week, but we don't think and see footprints like that because they're so incredibly rare. However, stop. This site is incredibly rare. This is unique. But for whatever intents and purposes, the footprints were far more deeper than this. No matter how much pretension this archaeological site gives us, the flint itself was probably collected from 15 miles away, probably associated with flint from beaches, or maybe they were collected because of maybe they were collected from glacial moraines of some kind. So what we're getting is some of the other bits of evidence, and obviously the odd one, the one in the left-hand corner, is not really. I'm not going to be covering that a minute. But what we've got these incredibly massive bits of axe there, and what we've got there is we've got an antler harpoon. So what we've got, barb points on sort of that antler harpoon there, and the antler frontlet there. And we've got 21 of them, and we've got 200 of these antler barb points. And the antler of the red deer stags. So when we think about these types of objects, and they're not massively long, 8 centimeters in length, maybe or more. And these types of objects represent 95% of all those types of objects. The carved, jagged hunting tool, that 95% of everything that we know of like that comes from Carr. So, and these sort of antler frontlets, these objects, the antler frontlets are made from red deer stag male skulls with the antlers still attached. The 21 antler frontlets are sufficiently complete to see how they have been manufactured. So there we go. 2 holes were perforated through the skull with a flint tool, and the inside of the skull cap was smoothed. Right. So are we thinking about these things? Get another one there. There we go. Oh, let's go back to those ones. We'll come back to these as well. Yeah, we'll leave them there. So there we go. We've got those 2 holes. Were perforated through the skull with a flint tool, and the inside of the skull was smoothed. The antlers on each frontlet have been carefully trimmed. So those have been carefully trimmed. They have. Maybe they've been carefully trimmed because they wanted to reduce weight. Well, okay. It seems very oh, so if they're going to reduce weight, are they worn? Like, so are they headgear? It seems very likely these modifications are designed to allow the frontlets to be used as headgear. So we're told. So maybe we think. And these, you can see these on display in the British Museum and the Yorkshire Museum as well. And in Cambridge and the Scarborough Museum, they spread them around a little bit. So what I'd like to do is I want us to, obviously we'll do that next week. There is a little plan now, much better there. And there it is. And obviously there's this great lake as it used to look, and sort of 5 miles away from the sea today, but we're talking about back in the day 15 miles away from the sea at least, or maybe more. So there's a long distance to come. So what we find with the site is that it's post holes, a sunken area and concentrations of flint, burning and other artifacts indicate that the structure itself was 3.5 meters wide. However, what we do believe is that there were several buildings, one on the shore of the lake, the other buildings actually on the lake itself. So there were several buildings, several structures. It is impossible to know what these structures look like, really. Again, there you go. Bit of a reconstruction. I think they sort of showed a bit of a reconstruction after the buildings have all sort of collapsed there. And if we sort of move on a little bit more, hang on. You know, there's just so many images. Carr, like this one. This is quite a famous one. This is actually showing you some of the activities, and so what we're talking about a lot of activity going on the site, but there's one air of caution to think of the activities. Remember, stuff has been going on at that site for nearly 1,000 years, so you're going to get lots of evidence of lots of activity, working various bones, working these deer antler sort of headdresses, flint, all these other things. And you know, when we think, oh, look at those there, these are those harpoons there. These are sort of, some of these are only sort of 8 centimeters in length, that type of thing. So you got a bit of antler, and there's notches in them. So these are harpoons, or they could be used for eels, that type of thing. And again, hang on, I'd just like to, again, there's just so that there's maybe that's how the headdress was worn. We don't know. There's lots of descriptions how these headdresses were worn. So I'd like to do now, I know there's lots of images. We're just peeling through lots and lots of images. And there's loads as we skip through. There's so much on the internet. A really crude but interesting reconstruction. So what we have is that I need to make clear that there's several buildings on the site. There's believed to be a large building sort of on the shorefront, and there's meant to be other buildings actually on the lake. Not meant to be, there are, but we don't know whether all these were contemporary or some were this time or that time. We really don't know. So it is impossible to know the form or materials from which the walls, the roof would have been made. They may have used hides, okay? They may have used thatch. They may have used bone. They may have used turf. They may have used bark. They may have been teepee-like structures or round wigwam-type structures. In other words, we don't really know. But then again, they could have had different structures at different time at any one point in time. There is no reason to suppose that the same materials and form would have been used for the structure's entire lifespan. So in other words, that's true. And the other thing as well is using different materials is all about what's available. So certain types of reeds are going to be available at certain times. And as the lake starts to dry out, those types of reeds are not going to be available. So you might use sods of earth for a roof. You might use skins. There's lots of things you could use. There was evidence that the floor was covered with a layer of moss, reeds, and other soft plant materials. And when they actually started excavating and understanding some of these structures, the layers associated with some of these structures were about 30 centimeters thick in sort of debris and all these other things. And, you know, the site, the landscape, the specific area is used for 1,000 years or more, or thereabouts. So I've been very vague on what structures we're talking about. So we've got the one main structure, which is on the shore, which we will be doing next week. So we'll look specifically at the two types of structures next week. And the other type of structure that we mentioned are these ones here. These ones. Now, some people believe that they were stand easy buildings alone. Some people believe that they were sort of on some kind of a platform, right? Lots of things going on, but we know that there was lots of timber going on, timber being used. Again, we're going to look at this next week. So timbers of aspen and willow were split along the grain using wedges, probably made of wood and antler. These were then laid in the boggy areas at the lake shore, presumably to provide firm footing. And the extent of the wooden platform is not known, but it may be significantly larger, more complex undertaking than the house-like structures. So we don't really know what's going on. We don't really understand what's going on. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about dates and how we get the dates. So I don't want just sort of more of these, again, get more of these excavations, getting a good idea. There's so many images on the internet. Look at that there from 1948. You're actually looking at exactly the same timbers that we saw earlier on. At that big question, would you like that? That is the point. That there is a point to that. Now, where's my tea? I want to drink. If these were available to view in a museum, how would you be able to monitor the other archaeology that you've left behind? And obviously this is 1948 that the excavations are being undertaken, and we didn't have all the technology back in 1948 to get dates and radiocarbon dates and really understand the context and the minutiae and microscopy that we've got today. And I go in looking at the archaeology and constantly analysing, we're getting more data as our technology improves. Obviously, every time that we excavate on the site, the wood's exposed and decay is present. So you're only able to open it within a window of time. So current radiocarbon dates, just quickly, if you lifted up these timbers and put them in museums, then the radiocarbon dates are going to be contaminated with the fresh air and being touched and all the rest of it. So by looking at the radiocarbon dates, actually from the ground themselves, the ground up. So radiocarbon dates from the site indicate occupation first commenced between 11,335 years ago and may have lasted to around 10,440 years ago. So run that again, 11,335 years ago to 10,440 years ago. I keep saying it's about 1,000 years, but it's just under that, isn't it? However, such occupation may have been episodic in nature, varying intensity between different periods. Now, I've got to think about that. I've got to think about.
Well, I'm just telling you, she's a guest title.
When the archaeologist Graham Clark was excavating, he didn't have the modern dating mechanism. So Graham Clark was one of these that said that, I'll read this out anyway, theories. He said that people lived there for maybe 100 years, but they lived here in the summer months, and then they went to the coast in the winter, and they went back, and they did that for about 100 years. Well, the evidence tells us the radiocarbon dates, so they're there for at least 800 years, and people were living in that spot for at least 800 years. The other thing as well is that we've got to ask ourselves is, why do they keep going back there after such a long period of time? That don't make sense, because it's something like that doesn't make sense at all, because the site changed over that period quite massively. One minute it's this great lake, Lake Flixton, and it starts to dry up, and there's only little bits of the lake left now today. And you think, well, if everything's changing over that period of time, the animals available for them to eat, and what other things they're consuming, and conditions are changing, right? So what was so special about this landscape? What was so special about the landscape? And one of the things that I always said about the temporary nature of somebody saying that this site was only used for a short period of time. If you went there in the summer months, and you only went there in the summer months, all the crappy bits of stuff that you don't want, and in the summer months, the lake would dry out and it'd get very smelly, and there'd be loads of flies around and so on. Why would you want to live there then? But then again, why not? Why don't you just continue living here? That's this sort of counter argument. And then the other thing as well is that I used to argue this a lot, and I'm still sort of with it, that I would say that if you think about this site, and you think that people were just they only used it temporarily, wouldn't there be a possibility that if you only used it in the summer months, by the time you got there back there the next summer, someone else might be occupying it? Why would you want to do all the work for that to happen? Anyway, site discovered in 1947 by John Moore, and basically Moore decided to excavate a small trench for Carr in 1948 as part of a series of investigations. On the discovery of intact organic remains, Moore contacted Professor Graham Clark, who completely took over the excavations and took all the glory. Clark began his investigation with the explicit aim of building a more detailed picture of the Mesolithic environment, Mesolithic pantheon of everything that was going to be there for us to understand, and the ways in which people used it. The organic preservation enabled the recovery of the plant and animal remains necessary for this. So Clark was excavating there, sort of bit of stuff, and then from 1949 to 1951, and then he published his work in 1954. Now, I'm going to make the brash statement that Clark was unable to record everything in a scientific way. And that's understandable. He didn't have all the scientific answers. So that's not a criticism of him. But not all the data was available for him to present it to us. And naturally, Clark's got a certain level of bias, because nothing like this has been found. Oh, damn us all! There was nothing really that we understood from the Mesolithic period in Britain at all up until 1947. So when Clark was excavating, he only had what he had to base everything on. So what he was saying was all what he was saying was all there was, because nobody had really done Mesolithic stuff. So let's not be critical of Graham Clark. Let's just shout him from the pulpit and say, bloody good on you, mate, for working in all this crap and coming up with as much information as you can and make it an archetypal site. Let's not be critical of the man as I've seemed to be. So Graham Clark believed he had uncovered the entirety of the site. That's the mistake he made. He thought he'd uncovered all of the site, all of it, but he hadn't. because over the years, people have, when he said, oh, there's just one building there. What? Hey, one building, that's it. Yeah, right, okay. But now we've got lots more other buildings there and lots more other evidence. That's the criticism. But then again, is it? He drew parallels between the finds that that he was finding at Star Carr and some evidence that was coming up from Denmark. It is now recognized that many of Graham Clark's comparisons and inferences were incorrect. Denmark was another place, but he had nothing else to base his archaeological evidence on. But let's not be critical of him, because he was a pioneer. And no doubt he was there as the fall guy. Yes. So by excavating there in 1977, 1985, 1989, in the noughties as well, since Nicky Milner. So what we've got is that we've got further understandings of this site. And what we have done is that there's been another site which is known as Carr, which has also got Mesolithic activity as well, which isn't too far away. So what we've really got, what we do, and the downside of what Graham Clark was doing was that he was putting the site within his own bed. Right, there was only this. He wasn't putting it within the wider ecological landscape. Back then, Stonehenge was Stonehenge. Avebury was Avebury. Hadrian's Wall was Hadrian's Wall. Castlerig was Castlerig. Very few people would link these things together. And that was maybe his key mistake, that he thought that's all there was. And you could say, and you might joke about it, that maybe what we thought about the Mesolithic period was just this one site. This is the only place in Britain that people lived. But what we do find is that from then onwards, people started to put this within the landscape. So it's just not just about a load of people. The most famous sketch there, it's not just about a load of people. It's about all of this together. Nicky Milner's tree, Professor Nicky Milner's tree, and the one thing is, well, that we do have. I remember showing this little map to Andy, and this years ago we did this, and we'll come back to this again. This is basically indicating all the little bits of archaeology from the site, and there's lots of it. And we do believe that this here, all these little yellow dots indicate sort of bits of evidence, and these little dots, the green bit is where the land was on the shore of the lake 11,000 years ago. And these little things here, these little yellow things on the blue, that's where the lake was, right? And this is where there's evidence of buildings on the lake, right? But there's also evidence of buildings on the land. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So this is the nemesis of what Graham Clark was saying, that there's only one bit of archaeology, and now there's like loads of it. This is the point, there's loads of it. And that one keeps coming up. I don't know why. That's the one from. Hang on a minute. Oh, we've run out of images. We're going to get some more. I want some more. I want some more images. Let's just sort of. Well, we're going to have that one. Love it. Again, lots going on. What I think what Graham Clark did, he found the edge and he thought that's it. So we'll not do any more. But there was a lot more, lot more. So the latest excavations in the 2000s by Nicky Miller, University of York, and we've got University of Manchester and University of Chepstow be involved. Basically, what they did, they right. This is a really important point. If you're going to challenge what an archaeologist is saying, you've got to have the evidence there, right? And you've got to be able to go back to that evidence, and you've got to be able to say, right, okay, we're not going to say Graham Clark is wrong, but what we're going to say is he should have said this, or maybe could have taken it in that direction, right? So that this is why the work has been very much reinterpretive. So again, they've been most significantly, now this is 2015 now. Lots of textbooks would say that Carr is probably like 10,000 years old, but no, it's 11,000. And what we would say is that recent geochemical investigations have demonstrated that the preservation conditions have deteriorated. And the result of this is that any remaining organic artifacts will be far less informative than those discovered by previous excavations. However, there's a lot more still to be discovered there. And though the reason for this remains somewhat unclear, it appears that the acidity of the groundwater has massively increased in the last few years. And it's probably because of modern sort of contamination in the ground. And the decorated pendant that we're going to do next week. So let's just have a little look at that decorated pendant. Okay, got that there. Okay, again, quickly, a bit of a distraction. The Carr headdress, love it. On the stamp, you know, I don't know if any of you realised, and I know we discussed this, in the pandemic, there were lots of different stamps being issued by the Royal Mail, and we used to send them out deliberately on the letters that we used to send you guys. I used to go out of my way and get the different ones, but obviously not the Carr headdress. Let's just, I just want to mention this decorated pendant as sort of a thing. Oh, look at that there. Wow. It's not as clear as the one we saw earlier on, deliberately, because that's what we're going to do. So decorated pendant, the Carr pendant, thought to be the oldest known Mesolithic art in Britain. Found not in 1948, but found in 2015. And the 11,000-year-old object has been put on display in the Yorkshire Museum with other finds from the site since 2016. And again, this is just such a tender approach to the past. And if we want to glean a story alongside those footprints, we need to look at this. And again, a big detail next week on this. But it's like somebody going along and they've got this pendant around their neck and they're making footprints in the mud at Sefton. And it's like, and in Goldcliff, and they're holding this pendant and they're looking at it and thinking, that reminds me of this. It's like, it talks as well. It really talks to you. I think it does anyway. It really, really does. I love it. I love it. So again, and by the way, I haven't stopped because I just want, I haven't stopped. I've continued through because I'm probably very aware if I stop, I'm probably going to lie down and I won't get up again. So if you don't mind, this is why I've kept going. But what I wanted to do is have a little look at some more images. There it is. Love it. Again, that image, that's the sort of stereotypical one. Let's try and get some more images up here. There you go. I don't know if we could turn that side on. I don't think we can. Look at that there. So these are some of the harpoons. A nice bit of cut stone there. Is that a bit of pendant over at number 7? What's that doing there? What's that? 5-pin, hairpin, something like that, hairpin. This here is a bit of This is the antler base there, and there's a bit of a hole in it. Nice bit of an artifact. And before I say this next bit, which will be sort of leading us to the end. Hang on a minute, leading us to the end. And we just hang on. Where are we? Oh, that's a bit odd, isn't it? Somebody must have left some duck boarding from a previous excavation there. I didn't think they did that. So here we go. Right, okay, put that on there. Love it. So we're looking at this sort of landscape. And look at that in the distance. There's a little bit of a crow there looking out at the landscape. And again, birds tell different stories, don't they? So Graham Clark, the original excavator, believed the Mesolithic people would have lived on a brushwood platform on the edge of the former Lake Flixton. So again, this is what I want to do next week. I want to focus on the decorated pendant, right? Now, I want to focus on the buildings and how the buildings work. What's all that with the buildings? You know, I want us to focus on that next week. We've done an overview, so we don't need to do any of the other stuff now and so on. So we can do those two next week. So Graham Clark, the original excavator, believed the Mesolithic people would have lived on a brushwood platform on the edge of the former Lake Flixton, one building they excavated back then. Recent excavations have revealed that people lived on the dry land, upslope of the lake, and various activities were carried out at the lake edge. There is much debate about the time of year the site was occupied. And obviously all the buildings associated with the lake, all the various different buildings that are there. More about that next week. Mesolithic people hunted a number of animals, including red and roe deer, elk, oryx, and wild boar. But there are various seasonal assessments. And as the site was occupied over several hundred years, it is likely that seasonal practices carried over time. So, you know, there's just sort of lots of really different things going on. Lots of really different things going on. It has been suggested that the antler frontlets were used as a hunting disguise or in some form of ritual practice. Recent work suggests that these, along with other objects made from red deer antler, appear to have been respectfully deposited at the lake edge due to the spiritual significance of red deer to the people who occupied the site. Do I go with that or don't I? Well, not really going to talk about that, but what we are going to do is get another image. So are these ritualistically being placed there? Are they sort of being placed there? So are they used for hunting? Don't know. Hang on. So got that there. Hang on. Let's just see if we get some more images. Up there. Okay, let's just keep going down. And lots of the usual. There's that wonderful pendant that we're going to look at next week. It's tiny, isn't it? Very small. And move that there. I'll get that off there. Have another image. And again, it's very surprising that is what the field looks like today. And this is what they're excavating. If we go back to there, and we go to, it's absolutely amazing. It's amazing, isn't it? What there is left. Hang on. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? It's absolutely astounding. It's astounding what's there. It's astounding. And again, that's been excavated once and it's been excavated again. And that's the lake shore there, and it's sort of out there, the different platforms. Again, more about that next week. And so again, the ideas of the bones on site go back and forth. So the re-examination of the bone and the animal bones located at the site, they found strong evidence to suggest that the site was used only in late spring and summer. Evidence that the cull of red and roe deer was biased towards 3 and 1 year old animals respectively. Revision of available meat. Reduction in scale of occupation, no bias towards hunting of male red deer, and tentatively suggested the site was used as a hunting camp. It's a lot of buildings for just a hunting camp, but that gives you, again, the scale of the site. Look at it, and that's just one area. You know, it's a massive level of archaeology. It's amazing penchant of expanded archaeology. Again, expanded archaeological evidence. Let's have another one. What they are doing in this, and what I am going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of a recap of some of the archaeology from current archaeology. So that'll lead us nicely into next week. And this there is what they're doing is that they're saying that if you look, this is back in 1948, and this is now, well very recently. And you can see there that if you look at, hang on, if you look at that, bits of that timber there are decayed, right? But then again, when you think about it, and obviously they must have taken that away as a sample. But when you think about this lower area, most of this is gone, most of this is decayed away. But the thing is, what do you expect? They're constantly looking at it and understanding it and studying it. And again, eventually that's all going to go. But and lots of conditions have happened within the landscape where there's draining of the peat, huge changes within this sort of great organic landscape. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to do one more bit of news on this, and then we'll call it a day, because to be honest with you, I'm absolutely knackered. So it's called, what we will do, I'm gonna mention this. It's called, we'll do this next week actually. But I'll just do an overview. Return to Star Carr, discovering the true nature, true size of a Mesolithic site. What we can learn from going back to the site that was first excavated by Graham Clark in 1949, 1951, and that has since become the type site for the early Mesolithic. The answer is a new understanding that overturns much of what we have been taught about the lives of early settlers in Northern Europe, which we've been saying. If you had been alive about 11,000 years ago, living at Star Carr, you might well think yourself one of the luckiest people ever born. Dimly remembered stories handed down the generations and recounted by older members of your community tell of a period of intense cold when the land was frozen hard and little grew. Then everything changed. The earth warmed and melted, trees grew, and the woods and lakes brimmed with food. That was when your people came to settle by the large lake that is your home. It was as if someone had said, "Enough wandering, this is a good place to stay." Oh, that sort of conflicts with this being a temporary site, doesn't it? I told you there was lots in this. And so it proved to be, as they put down roots, built homes by the water's edge, and gradually colonized the shore, so that the smoke from campfires now rises above the reed beds as far as the eye can see. Such a scenario for the early Mesolithic would have been dismissed as fanciful less than a decade ago. True, tundra conditions prevailed in Northern Europe towards around 12,900 years ago, but we're well beyond that. True, the landscape warmed up at the around 11,600 years ago, but we've now got birch and pine gradually colonizing this sort of world. By 11,000 years ago, we see something very, very special happening at Star Carr. And that, my folks, is what we will be doing next week. So I'm going to I'm going to do this now. And we're going to go to, why don't I just pick on Anne straight away? Anne, go on, tell us what you'd like to say.
All I can say is I'm still on this anthropology book, which is looking at small groups, and so much of what I'm reading there seems to tie in with what, you know, I mean, obviously this is modern, but they are hunter-gatherers and that kind of thing. And so much of understanding, or at least this book that I'm reading tries to explain their motives and things like that. And I almost feel I'm applying it. I mean, maybe I shouldn't in a way, because these are different people and at a different time. But it does seem to make a lot of sense to me in the two coming together.
Yeah, and this is the thing. You've got to understand archaeology. You've got to go wider, and you've got to come back in.
Yeah.
The thing is, Pat. The thing is, right. The hardest thing with teaching archaeology over the years is that you go initially, you go with what's out there, and you tell people what's out there, and you keep telling people what's out there, and people believe it. And for some strange reason, nobody says a word, and they believe everything that you're saying. And then eventually, you start to believe that there's more to what you're reading, and then everybody else starts to think there's more to what you're telling us. And then eventually, you start to expand on what this is all about.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you've got to do.
Yeah.
This is something that you must do to really understand our history, and to really understand people. And you know, one thing when you're acting is that it's an interpretation. I say for example, Sir Ian McKellen, he interpreted Richard III in a completely different way that somebody else might interpret Richard III.
Yeah.
And then you could have a woman who plays Richard III, and you could have somebody with an American accent who plays Richard III, and you could have, you know, there's so many different interpretations. One thing you can't do with history and archaeology now is say butter's butter, because there's so many different flavors of butter, and the world's changed, and there is a massive danger though. And the danger is the internet. And the danger is that there is so much stuff out there that you don't really know what is true anymore.
Yes, that's true.
Because nobody is actually, right, what I'm saying is this is my interpretation. The reason why you're doing this is that you're gleaming insight. We're not saying it's the be all and end all. But what we have to do is we have to be pragmatic, and we've got to understand that things change. Everything changes.
That's right. And there's lots true about a lot of things. What is thought truth at some stage of knowledge is then denied at a later stage when they learn more about it in all sorts of fields. That would be true, and it must be the same in archaeology, I think.
The thing is, I'm not a Christian, but I believe that Jesus Christ existed, right?
Yeah.
Now, is that a paradox? Is that sort of conflicting? I don't think it
because
is.
because one is history and one is religion, and they are, so the one can stand up historically, but the belief in what he was teaching is something different. That becomes religion, and it's a different aspect.
And that's interpretation. That's interpretation.
Yeah.
The thing is, right, I've got no problem with turning around to saying that there was a kind guy in Jerusalem who was going around telling people that they should love thy neighbor, and they should help other people, and they should do this and that. So I can believe that person existed. But
I'm
why
not sure.
can't I?
I'm not sure how far I'd go with believing it, in the sense that the history, even his life story, wasn't being written down until something like 300 years later, or something like that. Therefore, and so much can be done by religious leaders in changing his character or whatever in what they want us to believe. So I'm not sure I could even go that far.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that why couldn't a person that like that have existed? That's my point.
Well, it could have existed, but we don't know that they did. That's what I'm saying. To believe it, like, you can say yes, that could have happened, but I don't think I could say I believe it. I believe he was a real man, historically, but I don't know quite what he was teaching.
But the thing is, I'm not a Christian either, so
no, nor am I. Nor am I. So that's
Well, I hear Drina's not a Christian, and she gets persecuted for her views, because she's a good Samaritan, Drina.
Yeah, she is.
So anyway, Anne, thanks for that. Let's see who else we got. We've got.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to go. Good night, everybody.
Oh, good night, David. I will see you next week, David.
Glad to see you back and better,
David.
Oh, it's gone. That was.
Hey, I tell you what, right? I tell you what, that's good of David. He's improving.
He's good.
Because usually he just says, "I'm going. Goodbye." What? Wait, what? Try, Dave. Right, Andy.
It's one of those sites, isn't it, that just keeps giving.
Yes.
It's an extraordinary site. You could spend a lifetime there, really, just looking at and especially now that in the last sort of like 10 years or so, how scientific approaches have changed so much on a molecular level. We can just dig it all out again and look at it all again.
Yeah.
Except for that pendant.
Yeah.
That pendant's something else. Yeah.
That pendant
to me,
is something else.
Though it could be the what was held by the leader.
Pete, don't do it now. Don't do it now, Pete. You're doing it next week.
The Talker's Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be next week.
Next week, Pete. Next week, Pete. Next week.
All right, sorry.
Anything else, And? No? Okay. Right, Margaret, what about you? You gobby woman, Margaret?
Well, I'd written loads of questions down, but you kind of answered them all. I'd written.
Oh no! Come on, that's a cop out. Come on, that's ridiculous.
I'd written how long was the site used for, and you answered that. You thought it was about 4,000 years.
No, 1,000 years.
Just 1,000 years. I thought you said 4,000.
No, I never said 4,000. Hang on a minute. No.
Well, I've written here used for 4,000 years.
No, I said no more than 1,000 years.
Oh well, and I've written. I can just imagine people arriving there. Was it a freshwater lagoon, a glacial lake?
Well, it would have been. It would have been sort of low-lying water. It wouldn't have been stagnant or anything. It would have been fairly pleasant, but then eventually it becomes stagnant and clogged up, so and all the rest of it.
Fish in it.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So I imagine it would have been discovered first of all by animals.
Yeah.
And they would have made tracks through the forest. The forest would have been growing for about 1,000 years, wouldn't it?
That's right.
Quite old. So the animals would have made tracks through the forest. And so maybe a family group looking around for berries or whatever, found the animal tracks and found their way to the lagoon and thought and saw that animals were gathering there, so it would be a good place to set up a camp. And so they would have made a very rudimentary shelter to begin with. I presume it would have just been one family group initially, so they would have made just one shelter big enough for them. And they would have cleared a little bit of land and maybe made a platform so that they could skin the animals. So they would have been like a very small community initially. And then the campsite would have grown over the years, wouldn't it? Hence the extra buildings.
The thing is, we don't know how much of the site was used at any time. You know, we don't know if there was one building there at any time, or was there two, or was there three. We don't really know. And
have they found one larger building, like a communal?
Now, this is something that we discussed before, and that's something that we'll look at next week. Yeah, there's that idea that one of the buildings, that one of the buildings was a key building.
Yeah, that made sense, didn't it? Yeah.
Then again, it makes sense to us, but to them, what was that building about? You know.
And I bet they probably had hunting dogs by then, didn't they?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, why not?
Safe. I mean, you would want a hunting dog to keep away the bears and the threatening animals.
Yeah, I agree, and why not? Yeah, the thing is, well, why can't you have other animals? I've got my baldric to keep me company. They could have had all their. The thing is, that's true though. We
Yeah, my Aussie dog keeps the burglars away for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way. That's the way. So, well done. That sounded good. That sounded good stuff. Anyway, thanks for that, Margaret. Yeah, cool. Now, who else have we got now? We've got now. Let's have Pat then.
She's muted.
Pat's fallen asleep.
She's muted.
Pat.
She's nodded off.
Fallen asleep.
Not moving.
She's nodded off.
She alive?
She's contemplating thoughts.
Oh, she is moving a bit.
Concentrating.
I love that question.
Mein Fräulein.
I love that question you post, like they come along and then one person decided we'll stay here, because somebody must have done that.
Yeah.
And that's just a brilliant thought. That person might have been the first person in the world to say, we're going to stay here. I'm fed up wandering round.
Yeah.
It's that bloody woman, she won't decide where she wants to live.
Why would you wander off anywhere else when you've got all the animals coming to the watering hole?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
We still haven't learned how inadvisable it is to build on a floodplain, have we?
Well, they were up in trees.
It's what, 12,000 years and we still haven't learned it. Yeah.
They were up in trees. That's where they were.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that.
But maybe the person that come up with the idea of building the floodplain is still the person who does the organising for building houses today.
The planning department. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And guess where he's from? Cornwall.
Says it all.
Oh, Cornwall doesn't have many floodplains, though. So.
No, we don't. That's true.
Safe spot to build down there.
That's true. So,
does some kind of timbers preserve better than others?
Basically,
resin content.
Yeah, that's the acidity of the flood.
That's a dead cert. Yeah,
that preserves them.
Yeah, but
it's quite acid.
Some trees do last longer than others, though. That's right, and I would suggest they're probably the hardwoods, because I can't remember seeing any ancient softwood.
Yeah,
so I might be wrong, of course. But...
No, I think you're dead right.
You're not going to get the modern larches or anything surviving or anything like that,
etc.
They have the old alder trees back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they like water, don't
they? We get a lot of oak.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And willow.
We do.
The willow, they would probably have used that for basket making.
Yeah,
as we still do today.
Very good.
Or
wood.
even cricket bats.
Yeah, they could have done that.
Cricket bats, yes, yeah.
Even cricket bats. Right. Anything else from you, Pete?
What use would a cricket bat be? No one's played cricket.
The thing is, right?
Bear over the head.
The thing is, LBW's relatives do come from somewhere, so why couldn't they have been cricket bat makers?
Yeah, could be.
Well, they'd had some games, wouldn't they? You would have thought they would have.
They didn't have time for games.
They didn't work them the long hours, did they?
They did have games.
The hairdressers was some kind of a game.
Yeah,
so they could play games.
Hunting
We saw
game.
pictures of them doing dancing, didn't we, in the Sahara, you know, when the water was there with pictures of that.
They didn't
So,
have
yeah,
photography back
games.
then, you silly woman.
That's why they drew pictures on the walls.
Well, or they drew pictures on people's backs.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the flat.
Whatever the game was that they could think of, I should think they had some.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
Did you ever see that film, The Time Machine?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it.
Where he's in the machine and he's facing a window, and, and there's a dummy with the latest fashion, and it goes forward in time, and the figure keeps changing, the clothes keep changing, and then there's a war, and then the war's and all the changes through hundreds of years. It's a bit like that, isn't it? Archaeology.
Yep.
It certainly is. Right. Anything else you want to say, Pete?
Not particularly. No, it's quite good. I think we did well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I got your approval, Pete. And finally, Drina. Anything you want to say, Drina?
Well, I was getting a bit confused about why would you want to live in a bog, but obviously they didn't, because that would be
concerns. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you can find dry land. And the other thing was that there are folk dancers that use deer antlers.
Yes, there are.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are. Yeah.
So, just a thought.
Yeah, no, just a thought. I completely agree with you. Exactly. I don't know where they are, but I know where they all are. Claire's basement.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Right, me and Andy, me and Andy are going to conspire one day to secretly creep into Claire's house. Right. But what's going to happen is going to be one of those like Claire's into this, right? And me and Andy will be going down the steps down into the cellar, and suddenly there'll be a door slammed behind us.
That'll be it.
And that'll be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
never
if you never ever see me and Andy again, that's what's happened.
We're stuck in Claire's cellar. Yeah, we can get in there easy enough. You're right, but getting out wouldn't be very easy.
No,
as part of the Flora dance, the first dance is called the Allen Toe, and that is usually quite often the youngsters. And that's very early in the morning, and they're carrying weapons and all sorts as they're dancing through the streets.
Right.
So that goes back a long way. The Allen Toe.
Yes.
The actual Flora dance is far more modern than that, but
yeah,
I have danced it a couple of times myself.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, I guess what, Pete? Pat's woken up. Anything you want to say, Pat?
Oh,
You muted, Pat.
Pat G. Do you know what? That's a good name, isn't it? Pat G. Pat.
No,
Go on,
fine.
Pat,
Thank
talk
you very
to us.
much. Sorry.
All right, you don't want to say anything else. Okay, then. We think that's quite good. So we got Pat G. We got PS Pete Sampson. We got Dreeny Beanie. Well, Andy's never going to heard this before. Andy Pandy. See, that's a good one.
Yeah, not thought of that.
I'm an MP.
Margaret Lake.
I'm an MP.
no.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
there
that's
you
true.
are.
That's true. That's true.
MP for Arnside.
Exactly. So, right, on that note, is there anything anyone else wants to say?
Oh,
No.
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 Thank
Okay,
you.
are we done for today? Okay, then, well, I'll see you all next Tuesday.
Oh, is that it? We've not had a break.
No.
What?
Flipping heck.
Cool, flipping heck.
What pound?
Yeah,
what pound back for no break?
I just realised we didn't have a break.
That's a good sign.
We've been going for 2 hours.
No wonder you're tired. That's because you didn't have a break, you see.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you could do, right? Keep the clock going for like another 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, have the break now. Yeah.
And you have the break now, right? And then we'll be finishing at 10 to 10. So if there's no other questions from Drina, Peter, Pat, Margaret, David, Andy, and Anne, I will no doubt see you all next week.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, it's my
Okay.
pleasure. So I'll see you all next week then.
Okay,
Okay.
then.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Carl.
Bye, everybody.
Peter,
Bye.
Andy,
Bye.
Margaret,
Bye.
and take care. See you all next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye then.
Take care. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye. I think I look quite good tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bit knackered, and I'll speak to you all soon. Like and subscribe. So these will be the only classes after September that I will be teaching, and Thursday. And that'll be it. Okay.